One of the keys to building good relationships is just being curious about other people, right? And wanting to know their experiences and their life stories.
Hello and welcome to the Fractional Executive podcast. My name is Ryan Kauth and I'm your host. This podcast is for owners of small businesses of $500,000 in annual revenue up to about $10 million in annual revenue, whose growth has plateaued. In order for us to grow the show and then you to grow your business with the great guests we're able to get, I really need you to be interactive, so drop comments below. In addition, please also like, subscribe, follow, share the podcast, provide us with a 5-star review. And again, the reason we do that and ask you to do that is so we can grow the podcast. That way you can grow your business because we have great guests on here like Maddie, who I'm about to introduce now. Our guest today on the podcast is Madeleine Niebauer, and she is the founder and CEO of vChief. It's a firm that supports high-level strategic executives with part-time leadership-level virtual talent, such as fractional chiefs of staff or COOs. She's a member of the Young Entrepreneur Council, which Forbes called America's most elite entrepreneur organization, and was a founding member of the Braven Career Accelerator, formerly known as Beyond Z. She's also an alum of Teach for America and the Peace Corps, which launched her strategy executive career. So please welcome Maddie to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Ryan. I'm excited to be here.
Maddie, thanks so much for being here. Early on in your career, you spent time with the Peace Corps, and then you went on to direct an education center and work in management consulting. And from there, doing strategy and chief of staff work at Teach for America. And again, we could probably do the whole podcast on your experiences, with the Peace Corps. But let's start out this way. How did your time in the Peace Corps prepare you to be an executive that later on would found multiple organizations?
Yeah, the Peace Corps was a really formative experience for me, honestly. I think coming from, a fairly privileged upbringing and landing in a village in West Africa and Ivory Coast where, people really had next to nothing. They were mostly subsistence farmers and there was no electricity or running water. My project was water and sanitation. So we did things like putting in new latrines and water pumps. And I think a couple things that I took away from it. I mean, one, it just teaches you to be resilient. Like it's really hard. It's really lonely. There are times where you plan some whole big thing and no one shows up and you have to change course and figure out, exactly how to sort of accomplish the things that you want to. I think it also really taught me that relationships are the foundation to accomplishing anything, right? In life, in business. I think the reason that I had successful sort of projects, as it were, in the Peace Corps was because of the relationships that I built with the people in my village and with some of the local government officials that helped put in new water pumps and things like that. And I think it also just gave me perspective on what you need to be happy. These people who have such little in life have such joy. And, it's hard when there's things like, they can't afford healthcare or other things that, I think create a lot more tragedies than we see in our day-to-day life here. So it's hard to see that disparity, but also really inspiring to see the joy that they have in their lives. And I'm still in touch with my family from the Peace Corps and I love them dearly. And yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's really fantastic.
So obviously you built a relationship there that was long standing. When you were building those relationships in a very new area, what were some things that made your relationship building successful? And maybe what were some things that you tried that weren't so successful?
Yeah. I mean, I think there and everywhere, one of the keys to building good relationships is just being curious about other people, right? And wanting to know their experiences and their life stories. And obviously being happy and excited to share that too. But I think just coming in with a really open mindset that, yeah, these people have had a very different existence than mine, but they have really beautiful life experiences that I can learn so much from. And so I think just always approaching relationships that other people have things to teach you, whether they're, have had great business success, whether they're, my kids or my kids' friends, like they just have a different way of looking at the world. And I think if we all could look at the world from different viewpoints, there'd probably be a lot less animosity in the world.
And like you just rattled off four really important entrepreneur traits there, right? Curiosity, open-mindedness, looking at things from a different viewpoint, like a child's point of view, for example. Yeah, I can see where you emphasizing building relationships really has helped you as a founder. And speaking of that, you're a founding team member of the Braven Accelerator, which is a career accelerator. And when you were doing that and you were thinking about what that accelerator would do, what do you think that maybe we have all wrong about career development? And how does that shape you today as a strategic executive?
Yeah. So Braven was founded by the woman who I was the chief of staff for at Teach for America, and then she left to start Braven. And so Braven actually was vChief's first client, which is funny. And I, I spent a couple of years working with them, getting it going, and they're really focused on the transition from college to career for low income and first generation college students. And I think what they found is that a lot of those students, when they go into their first career opportunities, don't necessarily have a lot of the life experiences that help, higher income or students from more educated families, a lot of the soft skills, a lot of the ways to talk about their experiences, a lot of knowing how to react to people in different environments. And I think Braven does an amazing job of really preparing those students to go into the workplace and be successful. And I think one of the things that I learned from that is that, we all strive, or at least many organizations and vChief in particular, strive to be really diverse workplaces. And, some of the people who come from underrepresented backgrounds don't have the resources to necessarily be successful when they hit the ground in their first jobs. And so I think for me, as I think about career development and especially trying to create a diverse and inclusive workforce, there's a lot there about, taking risks on people, on investing in people. Maybe you're going to hire someone into a role that they haven't done before, but you think they have the aptitude to do, but you also have to give them what they need to be successful. And I think that's one of the most important things I learned from that experience.
And I would say this too, Maddie. I mean, you definitely practice what you preach, because vChief posts a lot about exactly what you just were talking about. And, really that learning of where founders come from and where they now go is really why this podcast even started. And for you to grow your business and get off that no growth plateau, I would really encourage you to like, subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review, and share the podcast, because that way we get great guests on here like Maddie, and you can grow your business. Now, Maddie, you're a member of both the Young Entrepreneur Council and Entrepreneurs Organization, which many of us know as EO. As an entrepreneur, why are groups like this important for your professional development?
Yeah, I really adore both those groups, as well as the Ink Masters group that I did a retreat in Baja with this last January. And I literally actually just got off a call with all of them. We keep connecting because we just built such a strong bond. And I think the thing about them is it's a really important way to share ideas and problem solve and like celebrate each other's successes and wins, and also work through the challenges. I think EO, one of the things, we have sort of a monthly forum that we get together with 8 founders, and we talk through the best things that are happening in our life and in our business, and also the worst things that are happening. And a lot of those things are not things you're talking to other people about. They're some of your biggest challenges. And that could be anything like your growth is stalled, you don't know how to fix it, or you have an employee that's not meeting expectations, or you're struggling with your marriage, or your kids having depression and anxiety, or whatever it is, right? Like we really dive into all sorts of things. And I think having a peer group of people who have gone through what the unique entrepreneur journey is just incredibly affirming. And also on a practical level, like you get a lot of great, I mean, we don't necessarily call it advice, but sort of people share their experiences and you can draw from that. And and I think it's also just helpful to be a little less lonely on the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like I have my team that I can talk to about things, but sometimes there's things that I just need another founder to work through together, and that's been really helpful.
I think that's really insightful, and thanks again for sharing, about the Inc. Masters Group and that you've created that bond, and you're still, talking to each other. And I think it's also important that you're part of several different organizations, right? Not just one. You're meeting other founders and learning from them. And with my clients as well, I very much encourage them to get involved in organizations like that for the reason that they will learn best from other founders. Maddie, what was the hardest thing for you to learn, kind of going from that functional, operations-minded executive to a more visionary executive now as the founder of vChief?
Yeah, I think this is actually a really good question for me, because I am by nature a very sort of functional operational leader. I'm a doer. I'm a chief of staff at heart in many ways, right? Like I just love seeing where we need to go and executing and like creating order out of chaos and like, let's move the train forward. And so that is actually my natural space, right? It's much more natural space for me to be in than the like big picture, blue sky, like what could we possibly be? And so for me to shift into that role, and, I think along the journey of vChief, I have always done both, right? Because I've always been the CEO, but I was also for many years the one who was running everything, right? It wasn't until a few years ago that we grew our central team, and then I could let go a lot of the operational pieces, but it was hard for me to let those things go because A, they brought me joy, and B, I thought I was really good at them. But it turns out other people can be good at things. So I think, it's interesting is actually a vacation that I took that prompted the last of that. Like I used to talk to every client. I talked to every person who was applying to our talent pool. I did all of the matching. And the matching, which I think is kind of our secret sauce, right? Like finding the exact right person to work with any given client. And that was the hardest piece for me to let go of because I just knew the most about our clients and our candidates. And when you make that match, it feels so good. And I really loved it. But I went on vacation. I was like, you know what? I'm not doing any work. I'm turning everything off. I'm going away for 2 weeks. I took like the apps off my phone and I let someone else do it. And I think actually like that process of like emotionally letting go and letting someone else take it. And that was supposed to be temporary. But then she proved to be really amazing at it. And now she runs the whole team that does it. And I never took it back actually. And I think,
good for you.
I think vacations can be a really good forcing mechanism to get other people to do things for a little while and can get CEOs a little bit pulled out of the weeds. But so I think it was a hard transition. I think the other thing is like, I can still acknowledge I'm still not the best big sky thinker, right? There are other people who are really great at that. And so I definitely get help from other people to start thinking about that, right? And even people within our team. So I have, there's a woman named Beth Jacobs, who's the president of vChief now, and she really runs the day-to-day operations. She has grown with us. She was the first person who sort of helped build our internal team. She was one of our consultants, and she can often help me get to a higher level of strategic thinking when we are sort of bantering back and forth about ideas. And we recently expanded our service offerings, and that was largely, feedback that we were getting from the team and from some of her ideas, right? So it's not like I have to have all the answers or be that amazing, like high level strategic thinker. I mean, yes, I can do that, but I also surround myself with other people who have great ideas and can help push us in new directions or try different things.
Maddie, the recent marketing for your company, vChief, is really interesting. Tell me more about how a chief of staff can help an entrepreneur's company grow, as well as this trend in fractional executives?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with the chief of staff and then we'll move to the fractional executives. So it's funny because I fell into the chief of staff role at Teach for America. I was applying for a different role. They decided not to hire for it, but they liked me and they were like, would you like to be the chief of staff for the leader of this team? And I was like, I don't really know what that even is, but sure, because everyone seemed delightful and seemed like something I could figure out. And I think the great thing about the chief of staff role is it is a combination of really like strategic planning and thinking, but also a lot of day-to-day execution, which was just a good fit for like what I like to do. But also I think it really helps leaders both having that thought partner, someone who, you can bring big questions and challenges to, who's really your right-hand person, but then you can give them a big idea and they can take it and run with it. So chiefs of staff are usually doing a lot of project management, a lot of, sometimes it's big cross-organizational project that they sort of play quarterback and they pull in different people from different teams. I think the other things a lot of chiefs of staff do are, planning the cadence of meetings, whether those are leadership team meetings or board meetings, and just making sure all the prep that goes into those mean that those are meaningful times that people are getting together. And then also just really helping a leader align their time with their priorities, right? Like every other leader that I talk to is like, gosh, I never have enough time to do all the things. I never feel caught up, right? And I don't know that I'm spending my time in the best ways, right? Like we get pulled down rabbit holes and we're like, well, that wasn't the best use of time. And I think the nice thing about a chief of staff is they can sort of pull you out of the weeds and say, hey, what are our priorities for this quarter, for this year? And I don't mean priorities for the organization, which we always have goals that we're working towards, but as a leader, what are your priorities? What do you as a leader have to win at? And how do you stay focused on those things? So we have a template that we use that's like, let's name the like 3 to 5 big things. We look at it every quarter. I literally just did this with my chief of staff and assistant yesterday. And we said, these are the things that we wanted to focus on. These are the metrics we're looking at. How are we doing? Are you in fact spending time on the things you said you were going to spend time on? And that gives you a chance to sort of reorient yourself and say, okay, you know what? I said this thing was really important and I haven't done a darn thing about it, or I've done a little bit, but I want to do more. And I think a chief of staff is a great person to hold a leader accountable to do those things. And then also to just take all the other crap off their plate that keeps them from doing those things that are a priority. So it's nice to just be able to hand things off. Like we have a team retreat twice a year. We have the whole team and the leadership team. I literally don't think about that at all. I'm like, okay, here's where we might go. And then my chief of staff goes and plans the whole agenda and figures out what speakers we need and works with my assistant to plan, like the hotel and the photographer and whatever else, right? And so it's just like, I don't have time to focus on that kind of stuff. So she's the person who can really take that and lead it. And different chiefs of staff, I think, support leaders in different ways, right? Like, so a leader might have the type of chief of staff that follows them around to all the meetings and writes everything down and does all the follow through, or they're the one who goes to the meeting instead of the leader and is sort of a proxy for them. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I think the common theme is that they are a leader's right-hand partner, and that allows the leader to stay focused where they have the most impact. So that's the chief of staff role. That was really our bread and butter. That's how we started and all we did for the first, 5+ years of vChief. And then we found that our clients were coming to us with other needs. And so we decided to expand to do other fractional roles. So let me take a step back and talk a little bit more about the fractional. Sure. As a model. I think we do one of two things usually. Either a leader needs help on a long-term basis, but not full-time help, right? They might need 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week. And then we also do interim work. So if a client, has a chief of staff on maternity leave, we can throw someone in there for 3 to 6 months to cover that. And then I think what clients often find is we are just sort of high capacity gap fillers. They're like, oh, we have this other problem to solve. Can you give us someone to do that? And so that's how we sort of expanded beyond just the chief of staff. So we started doing fractional COOs and interim executive directors. And we also started this position we're calling the associate chief of staff, which is kind of in between an executive assistant and a chief of staff, where you might want some project management, but you don't need as senior of a leader in that role. And I think, we've seen a rise in fractional work in general, especially following COVID. A lot of organizations were looking for ways to get expertise, but might not need full-time expertise, right? And so I think the fractional CFO is super common, right? But I think we're starting to see it in all sorts of other positions. And we are especially focused on the sort of strategic and operational pieces of that. So, the COO, we also do some work on HR and finance and other pieces like that. So I think, for us, as I started vChief, we used a lot of fractional folks, right? Like fractional marketing people, fractional accountants, and others. And I think anyone starting a startup is often using those kind of resources because, you're not always going to grow a full-time team as you're launching out of the gate.
Sure. Maddie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I want to give you some time to have our listeners and viewers be able to get a hold of you and then just talk about some projects that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn at Madeleine Niebauer. And you can also follow me on Twitter. It's at Niebauer Maddie. vChief's website is vChiefs.com. And you can learn a lot more about what we're doing there. We also have accounts on most of the socials. You can find us just by searching for vChief. And I'm always happy to connect with people and learn what they're doing and see if I can answer any questions. In terms of me and where I'm at and what I'm doing, as I said, I've brought Beth on to lead the day-to-day of vChief. I still am excited to be working at a high level on our strategy and our growth and thinking about our growth plans over the next handful of years and doing more external work, whether it's these networking groups I'm in or speaking. We will be back at the Inc. 5000 conference. We were glad to be on that list the past couple of years and spoke at the conference.
Congratulations.
At the most recent one, which was a lot of fun. Thank you. That was definitely a milestone that was really exciting and somewhat unexpected. So we're hoping to make the list again this year. We've had an even bigger year. So it's been fun watching our growth. I think, continuing to stay involved and think about how do we continue to grow, right? Like I know your podcast is sort of for folks who are hitting plateaus and figuring out how to move that growth forward. Right. I think everybody's kind of in that spot right now, right? Like we, in my EO group, a lot of people are talking about how things feel really weird right now with the economy and not knowing exactly what's up our sleeves, but we're building out our marketing function and devoting more resources to that. So I think it's just an interesting thing to keep thinking about because I know we have ourselves. So we have grown so much, but I think we have a potential to continue to do that. And so many folks who could benefit from our services. But I'm also excited to think about new chapters. So I'm in a little bit of that liminal phase where you're sort of between things and things are a little messy and you're trying to figure out exactly what you're going to do next. And I think I will continue to keep my fingers in vChief at some level, but I'm also examining a couple of different other business opportunities. So TBD, which one will come to the front. And then, on a personal front, I am excited to be doing, and I'm passionate about advocacy work in the transgender community. I have people who are close to me in my life who are transgender, and in this day and age, they are very much under attack. And so I want to make sure that we are doing what we can to really support that community and get them both the healthcare and, the love and support that they need.
Maddie, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. She's just told you how to get a hold of her and some of the projects that she's working on. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's really great to be on here and tell you a little bit more.
Thank you. to have the Fractional Executive podcast get more great guests like Maddie on here. So again, you in turn can grow your business. Please like, subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review, and share the podcast. This has been the Fractional Executive Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Kauth. You can get a hold of me at ryankauth.coach. The Fractional Executive Podcast is produced by Influencer.tv, the great team of Adam Marino, Brian Allen, Mark Livingston, and Chris Dries.